Hi guys, welcome back to the weekly Laser Talk, and this week I'll be talking about Universal Soldier, Dolph Lundgren and Jean-Claude Van Damme. One of my favorite Van Damme movies, even though it's not one of his best, it's one I've just always found to be very enjoyable. Enjoyable but flawed. It's a movie that every time I go into it, I want it to be better than it actually is. There's more potential in here than the actual finished piece. It's a great, somewhat mindless action movie, just spectacular in that form, but it could have been so much deeper and better. It could have gone the vein of, say, Time Cop, which I think is Van Damme's best movie. My second favorite, but I think his best movie, because that crosses the line into being a little bit better of a sci-fi action flick than the general Van Damme formula. And Universal Soldier has that potential. It has a great opening that really sets it up to possibly be fantastic, with Dolph Lundgren's character, Sergeant Scott, going a little bit nuts in Vietnam, and he and Luke, Jean-Claude Van Damme's character, ended up killing each other while Jean-Claude Van Damme is trying to defend these two remaining Vietnamese survivors of this village that they've basically massacred. And it's a very powerful opening that really sets you up to feel for these characters and their motivations, and it doesn't go to the extreme that it could have. Both of your main characters die in the opening minutes, and then 25 years later you find out they are part of this super soldier program, Unisols, making this universal soldier. And here's where the movie becomes a good action piece but starts to fall a little short on the plot and not really using its potential. It really could have gone into more detail, a little more explanation sprinkled throughout the movie over how this works, instead of just the kind of hypercharging their bodies, reaching a super high temperature to bring them back to life. And it's kind of like this mega boost of metabolism and adrenaline. That's really sort of the most basic understanding, and the body is just overheating, and it comes down to, it's an interesting possible explanation of how this could work, but they could have gone into a little more detail, made it a little bit more of a smarter movie in a way. And it works for what it is. For what it is, it works fine. And they actually do a really good job, particularly with Van Damme's character, as for the issues of trying to cool down all the time and overheating as these systems are overpowering. And they create a really cool fighting force. You have things like Rolf Moeller and different people fighting in these crazy, over-the-top, almost superhero-like drones almost that they are, completely under the control in this very secret, not actually traditionally sanctioned or funded experimental force. And they show you right off the bat in a rescue scenario where these Universal Soldiers go through and rescue everyone with no injuries, no fatalities, no casualties, and they show you very clearly what the abilities of these beings are. And it's a good reveal and a good big action sequence, but it never really gets a whole lot better. A lot of the action sequences throughout the rest of the movie turn into a traditional chase scene after chase scene, and the action sequences fall short of being truly original. I think that's one of the shortfalls, is that it's entertaining, lots of explosions and lots of punching and Van Damme running through hotel walls and things, but it's nothing that is truly spectacular, both in over-the-top visuals or in originality. It just works well, but it's not mind-blowing. It's not something that's going to completely stand out against the competition. It just works well. What makes the movie really work, though, is actually the character of Veronica, the news reporter played by Ali Walker. I think her performance, given the restraints of the character she's given and a little bit of the absurdities of the situation, it works really well and is played well and adds comedic value and adds a character that you can really care for. It is something where once Van Damme and Lundgren start to go against their programming, start remembering who they are, to the extent of being stuck in that final moment of their lives and reliving that conflict that they have with each other and fighting, and Van Damme trying to make his way home as Dolph Lundgren thinks he's basically still in the throes of Vietnam and goes a little nuts and wants to take control and take revenge on Van Damme's character. You have that relatable character through Veronica, who is a recently fired news reporter trying to get the scoop of her lifetime, really trying to break this story, and ending up, I guess you could say, almost falling in love towards the end with Van Damme's character, but before that really beginning to care for him in the sense of feeling bad for his situation, wanting to help him out. And she is a relatable character that adds a little more of a human element, where everyone else understandably has a bit of a wooden acting performance throughout most of the movie until you get to the very end and the very beginning. It fits those characters of the Universal Soldiers and makes sense. But the issue with that, it sets up a great action piece, but if there's no relatable, emotional, human element to it, it will be very kind of dry and boring. She adds that element, and later on, as Van Damme starts to kind of reconstitute his humanity, one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie is when they stop for lunch and he doesn't have any way to pay because she's on the phone, Veronica's on the phone, out in the payphone, and he ends up beating everyone up and I just want to eat, and it adds this hilarious human element, but his character wouldn't realistically have gotten to that point without the help of this other side character. So to me, she really in many ways saves this movie outside of the action scenes themselves. So overall, a very good movie, one that I've always enjoyed for what it is, but it's something that's not going to be, a 4-star masterpiece. It's something that's, if you really like the 80s, 90s action hero movie, and you like this idea, and you just want kind of a fun, action-packed sci-fi movie with a lot of great martial arts action in it, this is a good one. It's not a thinker, not one that's going to be amongst the best of the best. It doesn't quite go deep enough, and I say that even going into a Van Damme movie, normally I wouldn't really care about that, but I hark on it a little bit with Universal Soldier because it has so much more potential to be a bigger, deeper, more involved movie, more involved storyline than it was. But for what it is, it's presented very well. The special effects, again, I said those in the action scenes are nothing that are absolutely mind-blowing, but they are great fun, absolute fun, and that's what this is. It's a great kind of popcorn action flick, one to just sit down and enjoy and not have to overthink. And it does those parts that are emotional, those parts that do make you care for the characters are good enough that it's not completely mindless. It is something that you can still attach yourself to a little bit emotionally and enjoy these characters and make them fairly memorable throughout the experience, if not really beyond. But a good movie to watch, a great movie to relive, and a good LaserDisc release here. I mean, this is the type of movie too that I really like on LaserDisc. For LaserDisc, I really like old classic pictures, going from silent movies to say maybe the 50s, 60s. I really like it for that. Things like a lot of Best Picture winners, Criterion Collection stuff, that kind of stuff. The real, what some people might call pretentious collecting, but I disagree with that entirely. I genuinely like that kind of stuff. The other thing I like it for is 80s action movies, 90s action movies, that type of thing, Van Damme, Arnold, Jackie Chan, that kind of stuff. To me, there's something about those movies that just lends itself to a LaserDisc format. They just kind of go hand in hand in my mind, and this is a good one, and of course the perfect format to have it on. So, Universal Soldier, that is LaserDisc for this week, and I'll see you guys next time.